Hi y'all, welcome back to Fuck Calories. So Dr. Sarah and Dr. Soleil, why am I introducing myself like that? But I am Dr. Soleil. But anyway, I'm gonna shoot it over to Dr. Sarah because we have lots of fun, exciting things to talk about, but we're gonna try and keep this episode maybe a little short and maybe a little fast paced. So take us off with it.
Awesome. So today we're talking about current events. There has been so much happen in the last week. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. First of all, happy International Women's Month. And to
Yes,
celebrate that, something huge and historic happened today.
yes.
So there was the Barkley Marathons and Jasmine Paris, who is the first woman. So let me introduce it. I kind of first learned about the Barkley Marathons back when we were training for Kilimanjaro, because I, went down YouTube rabbit trails and, as they often do, like you follow one ultra sport video and then another ultra sport video, and you end up like in this, as you do with YouTube. And that's how I learned about the Barkley Marathons originally. And at that time, it had been running for 37 years. There had been 17 finishers at the time. In the 37 years, it had only been 17 people ever finish it, and none had been women. So maybe we should just kind of talk briefly about what the Barkley Marathons are.
Sure.
So do you want to talk a little bit, or you want me to keep going?
Yeah. So Barkley Marathons happen in East Tennessee every year, usually in the spring. It is very secretive. And so the start date is actually not very well known because it can happen anytime between as early as the end of March up until the beginning of May. So you have a couple weeks there where everyone kind of just is waiting for it to happen. Now with social media, we have a lot more access than we used to. The first race did take place in 1986. It was started by Laz, which is short for Lazarus, which is actually his nickname. And I think his last name is Cartrell or something.
Yeah.
Um, and he was inspired because in 1977, the guy that shot Martin Luther King Jr. broke out of jail and he spent about 59 and a half hours in the forest outside of the penitentiary, right? In East Tennessee, where he broke out. Unfortunately, he only managed to run 12 miles in almost
That's
60
60
hours,
hours.
right?
Yeah.
And so Laz was like, that's ridiculous. You can do so much better. I bet I could do 100 miles. So in 1986, he starts
It
the
was
Barkley
born.
Marathons, which
Yeah.
is 100 miles of ultra trail running. We are talking up and down. Elevation is about elevation gain because you're going up and down is 60,000 feet, I believe, which is
It's like doing Mount Everest twice.
twice.
Yeah.
It's like going up Mount Everest twice, and you have to make 100 miles in 60 hours. And it is a hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
There was a guy a couple years ago that I think was within like a minute after, and
Yeah.
he was not
Yeah.
included. And then they found out he also came from the wrong direction. So
Yeah.
he wasn't gonna make it anyway. But I was like, oh my God, a minute, like
So
they're
hardcore.
not
Yeah.
serious, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit March 22nd, 2024, what just happened?
So the first ever woman became a finisher, so there were 5 finishers total today. Several of them had done it in the past. So we're still only at 20, even though we were at count of 17 or 18, and then now we're at 20. That's the reason why, is because
Right.
several of the ones that finished today had done it in the past. And I just kind of want to back up for a second. When you said ultra trail running, that is true, but there's like not a trail.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like they are out there, and you're not allowed to have a GPS. You're not allowed to
Right.
have any electronics other than like a watch.
Yep.
So, no cell phone, no nothing. So you are out there with like a paper map and a fucking
Yes.
compass.
And
trying to
so,
run
yes. And what
fast.
I love is when you get to the gate to begin, Laz has the master map of his trail, and
Yeah.
you copy it with a
Yeah.
pen or a pencil onto your
Onto your
map.
own paper.
And you
Yeah.
hope you have the trail right,
Yeah.
because only on that quote unquote trail that you only have a compass and this paper map to follow, you have to hit all of the books, and that
Yeah.
is how they can confirm you actually rent the way.
And what are you
Correct
talking
way.
about by books?
So along the trail, they will
So there's
put.
no unlike some races, if our audience have done marathons and 5Ks and stuff like that, there are the trail will be marked, and then there will be the little pads that you run over that count your time and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's none of that because
Nope.
it is a completely unsupported race. There's no aid stations. There's no
Yep.
nothing. Like
And
it's
it is
completely unsupported.
pure national park forest.
Wilderness.
Like it
Wilderness.
is,
Yeah.
you are out there, right?
Like
And
animals and
so
briars.
mhm,
So
thorns, and
anyway,
you
the
come
books.
back beat up and bloody and like all sorts of stuff. So
Yeah.
there are little books throughout the way, and then we'll put paperback books in this Ziploc bag and we'll tie it to a tree. And you have to come across this book.
And
And
find it.
you open the book, you then rip out the page that is on your bib number. Let's say you're number 35. You rip out page number 35, you shove it in a pocket, and you go to your next book, right?
Yeah.
And you are traveling. Each circle is about 20 miles roughly. However, because nothing's marked, it is so easy to go off trail. And now you're off this way and you have to come back, right? Now you're off this way and so come back. So that's why they end up being, or a lot of people say they're the length of a marathon, each loop. And you have to
Yeah.
make 5 complete loops in that 60 hours. So 5
Yeah.
marathons if you keep going
Yeah.
off track, right?
Yeah. And
Otherwise it's
because of the
100
way,
miles.
yeah. And well, and they even say, so he like changes the course every year. And
Mhm.
supposedly the on the map that you get, like, or not that you get, the map that he has as master map, it says exactly 20.00 miles,
Mhm.
even though he changes it every year. So
So
there's
who
a really good
knows?
chance that that's inaccurate. There's a really
Yes.
good chance that, but nobody has like a GPS. Nobody could track themselves to find out
Right.
exactly how far it is. So people have said that it's actually like closer to 130 miles.
Yeah.
Plus that doesn't include, that's only the horizontal distance. That's not including
Right.
all the up and elevation and everything. But so anyway, and so the thing that's really cool is that so in the past they have done it like a clockwise. So the loops, you go different directions. So you do the loop multiple times, but you're not doing it the same thing over and over. So let me
Right.
back up even more. When we talked about there'd only been a few finishers, and there were people who've done it before, that's very common because it's really common. Like they let veterans come back and do it again.
Mhm.
And that's really common and helpful because you are out in the wilderness, like
Mhm.
trying, have no idea where you're going. And so it's really common for like a virgin, is what they call them, if
Mhm.
you're a first timer, to pair up with a veteran to do these races. And so anyway, Jasmine Paris, I don't know why I said that. I have a friend. Anyway, Jasmine Paris had previously done this race. She had not completed it. She had done 3 loops of it before, hadn't completed it, but then today she became a finisher within 99 seconds. So just a little
Yes.
over a minute to the 60-hour mark. And but the really cool thing is that so with your bibs, each loop, so the first loop you go clockwise, the second loop you go counterclockwise, and then back and forth. In the old or like 10 years ago, they used to do 2 clockwise loops and then you do 2 counterclockwise loops, and that's been changed a little bit. And I think it actually goes back and forth. I don't know which one they were currently doing, but and so that's really interesting because even though you're doing like this loop over and over, not a single time it's the same,
Right.
because you're doing it like once in one direction during the daylight. The next time you do that same direction, it's at night.
Yep.
And then you do the other direction during the day and then the other direction at night until the 5th loop. And then the 5th loop, you can, it's basically the first person who gets there gets to choose which direction they go. And then after that, it's every other one.
Mhm.
But so anyway, so like until the last loop, like you're every single time, it's like an entirely new race the entire way through.
Yep.
And so it's not only is it the intense physical struggle, but it is an overwhelming like mental, like you have to be for 60 hours, you're not sleeping
Yep.
during this time. So for 60 hours, you are like intensely navigating in the dark in this wilderness,
Yep.
getting beat up. And if you make a false step, like if you roll an ankle, like you're done.
Yeah.
And this is
You're
like going
screwed.
up and down ravines
Mhm.
and like over creeks and like it's super intense. So the
Yep.
mental fortitude that you have to have, I mean, is so taxing.
Yes.
So it's so impressive. So that's why there have hardly been any finishers in the, multiple decades that it has run.
Yep.
And today was the first time a woman has completed it. So
Oh, and she has 99 seconds on the clock left until
yeah,
60 hours. And there are no support staff, there's no aid stations, there's nothing. And so you
yeah,
carry everything you want on your body
yeah,
until you finish that loop, and then you
yeah,
can as
Yeah.
other people can come with you, help you change, I don't know, your shoes,
Yeah.
force feed you because
Yeah.
I mean, you're so
You're
exhausted, you
delirious.
don't want to eat, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that's the other thing is delirium. So these people
Yeah.
are running, and I was watching a documentary because there's a couple out, and I think the one when or how I was first found out about it was all like on Netflix in 2016 or something like that. But anyway, this guy talks about I was running with this guy for a good couple of hours, and then I discovered he wasn't real. And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, and then that's the Barkley Marathons. Like you
Yeah.
just, but he
Yeah.
helped me, and he's like, it was a figment of my imagination. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like that is
Yeah.
just insane.
Well, and
So
if you think about it, most athletes, I mean, I don't know about individual profiles of the people that were there, but most ultra athletes, they sleep more than the general population at baseline, like
yes.
they sleep 9 and 10 hours a night, and that's what their body is used to. That's what their brain is used to.
Hmm.
And to go 60 hours with no sleep and then navigating the entire time and,
Yep.
I mean, you are on the entire time. You cannot afford to like zone out at all the entire
Right.
60 hours.
Right.
So it's
Now,
just so intense.
absolutely. So each loop takes about, or there's a limit, right, for 12 hours. So let's say you get in 10 hours, you technically have 2 hours to burn if you choose.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people that will actually sit on their butts
Right.
for 2 hours waiting for the
Right.
next loop to start because by the end, right, you
Yeah.
are going half the speed in which you
Yeah.
started at. And so
Yeah.
you really have to account for that time. As we
Yeah.
saw today with Jasmine,
Yeah.
99 seconds left. I
Yeah.
know Sarah and I, we were on the edge of our seats and we're just like texting. And I was like updating all the time. I'm like, refresh, refresh. I'm like,
Yeah.
ah. And
Yeah.
this whole time, I'm like, she made it. She made it. She made it.
Yeah.
But like, until you know, we don't
Yeah.
know. There's no
Yeah.
live coverage.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no one else that's there. Like, this is
Yeah.
not a national TV.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
just
and
so excited.
the really cool thing is that 4 hours prior to the finish, she passed one of the like
The
uh
tower.
yeah, exactly. I don't know what you'd call that, like monuments or like
Yeah. Yeah.
stations that people look for, but it's
Hmm.
not a station. It's like one of the landmarks that people like look for. And they say that, or sorry, I guess it was like less than 4 hours when she got there, but they say that it's like if you are fresh,
Hmm.
people tend to make that in 4 hours, and she was at like 3 hours and 50 minutes on her last loop. And
Yeah.
the mint, and so like it usually takes people a lot longer on your
Yes.
last loop to get back from the tower to the finish line. And the fact that she did it in like less time than is like average, I mean, that is all like determination. She is
Yes.
so badass, and I am like,
Absolutely.
she is amazing.
And the
So
fact that she didn't even have time to make a wrong step.
yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
step out because you're
Yeah.
losing seconds.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm just so excited. And now I hope more people learn about it and more people follow it next year. But
Yeah.
I just kudos out to Jasmine, man. This
Yeah.
and the rest of the guys. I mean, I like they posted a picture and there's five finishers this year and they called themselves the class of 24. And I was like, that's so
Oh,
cute. And like it's the
yeah.
most number of finishers they've ever had in a year.
Yeah.
Jasmine was
Yeah.
the first woman. So
Yeah.
it's a big year to celebrate. The
Yeah.
yeah, the Barkley
And
Marathons.
remember, several of the finishers this time had done it before.
Yes.
So they are veterans.
Yeah.
They finished it before is what I should say.
Yeah.
And then we should notate that the person who actually won, that was the first finisher, he was from Ukraine. So that was
Yes.
pretty cool, with everything that's going on in the world right now. So
Absolutely. And Laz
celebrating
was kind of
Ukraine.
flying his flag when he passed
Yeah.
him. And so it was
Yeah.
just really nice to see.
Yeah.
And I think he is Ukrainian, but he was running
For
from
Canada.
Canada or
Yeah.
for Canada. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they sponsored him or whatever. But anyway, it was just really
Yeah.
nice representation. I think one of the finishers was from New Zealand. And it's just nice to
It's such a
see
cool
different
day.
countries. It's
Yeah.
definitely, I think, the most intense ultra marathons slash 100 miler, whatever you want to call this intense, crazy race that they do
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
world. Like this
Yeah.
is the number one craziest race, I think,
Yeah.
bar none,
Yeah.
right? That you gotta
Yeah.
go on foot. So that is some news today. That is
That's one.
crazy.
So let's talk about some other news that happened this week. So on this podcast, we talk a lot about GLP-1s, and
Hmm.
on Monday, and then the rest of the week online, there was a huge special that actually Oprah put out about GLP-1s. And so I thought
Yes.
we would just kind of talk about that a little bit because it is kind of a huge deal. I think, you know, regardless of how you feel about Oprah, I think that she did a pretty good job. I felt like it was really well done. And
Yep.
I hope that it sheds some light, because I feel like there's a lot of stigma and a lot of shame.
Yes.
Um, both, I mean, obviously there's a ton around weight, but I think there has also been kind of this pushback from like straight sized people that like you're cheating, or you're, you know,
Right.
like if
Yep.
you take a GLP-1, that this is like, you know, you should be ashamed or embarrassed or whatever, and that you
Absolutely.
shouldn't, you know, you should just diet and exercise. You shouldn't use this medication. And I feel like she did a really good job of breaking down a lot of just, you know, like thoughts about that, and like
Absolutely. And
showing.
barriers. And I think
Yeah.
the audience was interesting because I saw it was very diverse. It was
Mhm.
not um kind of just one size basically fits all. Like it was, there was thinner
Like,
people in the audience.
right.
There were people that were in larger bodies. There were men, there were women, there were all races. Like it was just really nice to see that she could diversify a audience for such a interesting topic that is new and
Yeah.
is still very sensitive to a lot of
Yeah.
people, right? Because a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
times it's it always, I feel like, is not only stigmatized, which it is, but it also gets put on women, I think, more than men. And I think that's a
Mhm.
societal standards as well, right? That like women should be the more beautiful, more
Aware of
thin,
their
like more,
size, and
yeah,
yeah,
exactly, because that's apparently what we have going for us. Um
important to us, but it's
yeah.
not to men.
Right, right, exactly. But I was also interested that she kind of broke it up in different segments and talked to different people, right? Patients
Mhm.
and family members, as
Yeah.
well as physicians. And then at the end, she brought two spokespeople from Eli Lilly and
Norva Nordisk.
thank you. I was like, what is the other
Yeah.
company? And so we even had the pharmaceuticals. So yeah, tell me
Yeah.
what did you take away from it? What did you think?
Yeah, so I felt like she was so going backwards, forwards. I felt like she was a little bit she went easy on the pharmaceutical companies. I feel like there's a
Mhm.
lot more hard-hitting questions that she could have asked.
Yep.
And that we need, I feel like society deserves answers about cost, about availability, about, you know,
Hmm.
everything that goes along with that, insurance coverage, et cetera. Why are they so expensive, et cetera, et cetera, especially when
Right.
they're being sold in the exact same brand in other countries for 1/10 the price. So, and she
Yes.
didn't go over any of that, and I wish that she
Yeah.
had. But I do, one thing that she said at the beginning, when she was talking about her own journey on it, I thought she said this phrase that was just so powerful to me and kind of made me well up a little bit.
Mhm.
And I am not a crier. um, but she was talking about how like she had been through her journey in her life and had been up and down and up and down her whole life, and of course that was like lambasted all over the tabloids for her whole life,
Mhm.
and now she's up 100 pounds, now she's down 100 pounds, and she talked about like when she pulled out the wagon, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
Anyway, um she said about how when she finally, and this her whole 30, 40, 50 years, that this has all been like a willpower
Mhm.
um situation, and about how she felt like she was a failure, and that everybody else was like able to control their body weight through willpower and she wasn't. And
Mhm.
then she gets on this medication, and it's like her brain changed,
Mhm.
and she said this statement, and I'm probably going to butcher, I'm not going to say exactly verbatim, but she said something to the effect of like, this is how all you felt this entire time. And
Yes.
like how, and this was my brain. And so like that just so resonated with me, because I remember having such similar feelings, and always feeling like, why can't I handle this, like why can't I, you know, like I am
Yep.
so obsessive in so many other parts of my life. Like you and I are both very high achievers.
Mhm.
I have like been obsessive in um with, like, you know, if calories in and out actually worked, then I would
Yep.
be very
You'd
thin.
be the number one. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have like obsessed and tracked and done all of the things to a degree that, number one, is a disordered, but then is so obsessive. Like no one can say that I am lazy, or that I haven't tried, or that I, you know, have
Yeah.
fucked it up or whatever, because I have done it, and have still been unsuccessful. And then when I got on the medication, it was like I was a new person, and it's like, oh, this is what everybody else feels like all the
Mhm.
time. And it's it's so, and you don't know how other people feel until you've been on, like, like nobody can feel what other people feel like. And
Right.
so until you've been on the medication, it's kind of like, how like when you're little, it's like, well, what if what I see as red is not really red? And what if you see what your green is my blue, And
Right.
it's like that kind of thing. Like we will never
Yeah.
know what each other feels, except maybe this medication has like kind of simulated that, because now my brain, I don't feel like I mean, it's different. And
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm rambling now, but it really touched me and I resonated with it and it made me kind of tear up a little bit because that is exactly how I felt.
Yeah. I think what was a very interesting thing that she brought up was she related it to the alcoholism, right? A few
Hmm.
decades ago, and that
Yeah.
people just told other people to just stop drinking. Like,
Yeah.
why can't you just stop? Like,
Yeah.
that's not a thing. Like, alcohol
Yeah.
addiction is not a thing.
Yeah.
And now we know, right? It's
That it
2024. I'm
is.
like, no, no, no. Alcoholism is in fact a disease, and
Yeah.
it creates a whole litany of issues and medical
Yeah.
problems. But
Yeah.
there's also a genetic factor that we're finding
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah.
That alcoholism also tends to run in families and
Yeah.
epigenetics, right? You can turn it
Yeah.
on and off, but that is definitely there. And a lot of people
Yeah.
now are talking about like addictive personalities or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, now we're in 2024 and people are still like, oh, obesity is not a disease. That's not a
Yeah.
thing. You're
Yeah.
just choosing to be fat. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, no, some people enjoy their larger bodies and do not
Sure.
want
Of
to
course.
change. Perfect. I'm talking about the people that have tried, have documented all
Right.
the calories, right, in and out,
Right.
and are desperate to change their body type because of X, Y, or Z, and they still can't. And they've just been told, well, you need to eat less and work out more and stop
Yeah.
doing everything that you're doing. And you're like,
Right.
but I am doing all of those things, right? I have eaten
Right.
less and I am working out
Right.
more
Right.
and it's still not working.
Right.
And so I think that's
Right.
an interesting correlation, especially with the new studies that will continue coming out with
Yeah.
GLP-1s
Yeah.
receptors in the brain,
Yeah.
right? And how it's
Yeah.
kind of turning off some of those possibly addiction
Yeah.
receptors or cues that could be
Yeah.
correlated. I mean, it'll be years until we have
Yeah.
more info,
Yeah.
but I would
Exactly.
not be surprised.
Completely agree. And
Yeah.
kind of not to bounce topics, but a final current event that came out this week. Um, Medicaid announced, I think it was yesterday, that going forward they will cover Wegovy for weight loss if it helps
Wow.
decrease the risk of other things. So there was a cardiovascular study that came out fairly recently, I think a couple months or maybe even less than that. I don't know. My
Mhm.
time frame it goes so quickly, but um, the study showed that even in people who do not have pre-existing cardiovascular disease, um, if they were on Wegovy, even independent of the pounds lost, they were having decreased cardiovascular risk in the future. And
Mhm.
so Medicaid came out whatever day this week, I forgot.
Yeah.
I think it was yesterday because it was the day after I got off work. I think anyway, it doesn't matter. But they said that going forward, they announced that they are going to be covered it. When that starts, I don't know. And
Wow.
exactly to what does it mean to have if something else decreases your risk? I don't know. It remains to be seen, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yes.
And hopefully that this will be something that our patients can access in the future and that has improved access and improved availability and improved coverage, because that's something that we
Yes.
need.
Across the board, and I think this is a very important first step, like you said, and I think this will I'm hoping, get the ball running, right? Because
Yeah.
whatever government insurances do, others tend to follow along, right? Now, the problem
Yeah. Private
is that it
insurance
takes
too. Yeah.
forever to get government to
Yes.
change their stuff. So that's why I was
Yes.
very impressed that they came out and said,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to start covering that. That is
Yeah.
huge. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping we'll continue seeing new coverage like this, just because that takes us back. If you have not seen it, go back and watch our episode on
Yeah.
insurance, and how they kind of screw us over with deciding not to cover, right,
Yes.
some basic diseases and
Yeah.
illnesses and medications that
Yeah.
can take care of them. But
Absolutely.
goodness, I think
This was
I'm
a
tapped out.
yeah, this was a kind of unique current events episode. I'm glad we got to talk about all these things that are going on, this exciting news that's going on in the world. This
Yeah.
is a little bit different from our usual programming, but I thought it was really important that we talk about these things because they're so timely and related.
Absolutely. And we'll maybe, I mean, if more stuff happens in the future, we'll do it again. But
Yes.
continue following along, leave us comments, like, share, all that good stuff, and we'll see you guys
Let us
later.
know what you thought about any of these topics.
Oh, yeah, good. Especially if you watch the Oprah stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I want
all
to see.
righty. Bye, y'all.